Alrighty, so we are going to break down how to specialise as a doctor in Australia. I think too often people just think we go to medical school and then become a GP and do that for a few years and then eventually choose what specialty we want to go into. But that is not how it works, and we actually have to go through a fairly specific pathway to get into our chosen specialty. It's very different to other parts of the world, so let me break it down. We'll start off by how to get into medical school and then go from there. Okay, so there's two different ways of getting to medical school. There's the undergraduate pathway, which means you go straight from high school into medicine. And usually that takes into account a few different things. The score that you got at the end of high school, whether it's the ATAR or whatever it's called around the states in Australia. Then you do some aptitude tests. It may be the MCAT or UMAT or whatever it's called. You got to get good scores in both of those. And then you have to do an interview. Now, the interviews that you do for medical school may vary, but usually it's the MMIs. And they are sort of like interview speed dating, where you have a few different stations, maybe it's about 8 or so, and you go around and answer different questions that each station has, whether it's about the healthcare system or why you want to be a doctor or why medicine is better for you than nursing, or whatever the questions that the school wants to ask you, they will ask that, and you have to do it under a time pressure situation. Pass all that and you can get into the undergraduate pathway. If we put that aside, let's focus on the postgraduate pathway, which means you do high school, then you do some other study of choice. I did some biomedicine science, which is just a glorified science degree. And then that was 3 years, and then you apply to medical school after that. There are multiple different ways or pathways, and this study period after high school can look a little bit different for each person. Some people do a full nursing degree and go be a nurse for a bit and then decide they want to do medicine after that. Other people have done physiotherapy or arts or engineering or whatever it is. They can do whatever study they need to or thought they might be interested in, and then they can get into medical school after that. So that's the postgraduate pathway. Slightly similar to the undergraduate pathway, but a little bit different. You need a GPA or WAM, so your weighted average mark, and that needs to be pretty high to get into the medical school as a postgraduate. You also need to do the GAMSAT test, which is a different type of aptitude test, slightly easier, I would say, than the UMAT or MCAT. And then you have MMIs or whatever interview the medical school wants to do. So going through that, then you get into the postgraduate pathway. So after medical school, let's fast forward. You are now a fully fledged doctor. You can work in the hospital, you can get paid. You have to do this first year, which is called internship. So you are an intern, you are essentially a doctor on L plates. Everything you do is supervised and watched very, very closely. You have your provisional license, you don't have your full registration yet, but you gotta be a doctor for about a year in this internship. They may be rolling out this 2-year internship phase soon, but for the moment, it's just 1-year interns. And then after that, you become a resident, if all goes well in your internship and there's no other terms and conditions or whatever. So everyone after finishing medical school has to be an intern. 1 year or 2 years, whatever it is, finish that, and then you can actually get your general registration. General registration means officially you can apply to specialisation pathways as a doctor. However, each different specialty itself has its own unique characteristics and requirements in order to get in. So the pathway to get into psychiatry is going to be vastly different to the pathway to get into neurosurgery versus general practice versus radiation oncology or whatever it is. So you need to figure out what pathway you need to take in order to get into the specialty that you want to get into. Now, this is very, very different because it's a postgraduate thing. After you finish medical school, you're already working as a doctor, then you figure out what specialty. Compare that to, say, what other people might have told you about the US system or other countries around the world, where you're essentially matched into that specialty before you finish medical school. So at the end of medical school, you know, I'm gonna practice as a gastroenterologist. You know, that's the specialty I got matched into. I believe that you can chop and change a little bit, but maybe it's not as easy as it might be. I'm not too sure because I'm in Australia and not in the US or whatever other country uses that matching system. However, the whole point is that this specialisation is almost predetermined before you actually start working in that specialty. So like it or not, that's what other systems use. It's different to us where we actually have to apply ourselves to that specialty that we want to get into after we finish medical school and are working as doctors. Now that brings its own challenges itself. So each specialty has its own unique requirements that they want you to do in order to get into them. Like usually they consist of a few different things, and it may be exams, interviews, you might have to do research, you definitely have to get some references or people who back you in and think you'll be a good doctor in that specialty. You may have to do some community work or volunteering or leadership positions. Whatever it is, you know, they have sort of a CV, a requirement that you can get points for. And you know, the better your application is, the better chance you have of getting into that specialty. Now, the complexity of this is that some specialties actually have limitations to how many attempts you can have to get into that specialty that you want to get into. So you only can have a certain number of attempts at, say, getting into, I don't know, surgery, general surgery, before they say, actually no more. You only get X number of attempts. And usually I've seen 3 or 4 attempts as the common limit number before you actually say, well, if you're unsuccessful after 3 tries, you can actually no longer apply to that specialty again, which is kind of scary to think about. But I think the whole premise of it is that you don't want to actually be giving false hope to these people who may actually not be best suited to that specialty if they're applying for it over and over and over again. Regardless, what we need to do is figure out how to get into the specialty that you want to get into. So I actually did a video about this a few weeks ago where I went through a really good website that breaks down all the different specialties, that has links to their unique college website, and goes through the requirements that you need to do in order to be successful at the application and have the best chance at doing it. So, you know, whether it's, say, medical oncology, whether it's pathology, whether it's, say, anesthetics, go to the specific website for the college of whatever specialty that you want, and then they have all the requirements that you need to do in order to get in or have the best chance at getting in. So there it is. That's how you specialize as a doctor, broken down really simply. You don't finish medical school and then just become a GP and then, you know, have to specialize after that, or just decide at the flick of a coin. You know, you actually have to apply and do lots and lots of stuff in order to get into the specialty that you want to get into. And that's kind of tricky and hard to figure out. But next time someone asks you, are you a GP? You can say, no, I'm a junior doctor and I need to apply to general practice if I really want to do that. Or whatever other specialty that you're interested in. So that's it, that's the pathway. Let me know if you have any questions or have any other things to ask about this situation or the process. I'd be more than happy to answer. I would actually recommend you watch that other video I made going through that really helpful website that breaks down all the different specialties and the requirements to get into them. So I'll link that in the description. But there you go. See you guys next time. Bye.